Thank you, Mr. Jordan. All right, next we have Cheryl Guarniero, sorry about that. And if you give your name and address for the record, and then.
Sure.
I'm sorry, and your topic is transparency and community recycling.
Yes. I'm Cheryl Guarniero. I live at 109 Treasure Trail up in Cleveland, South Carolina. I am the executive director of Make Greenville Greener. Our organization's mission is to make Greenville greener by increasing sustainability, green affordable housing, and environmental justice for all. As you all know, Greater Greenville Sanitation will be stopping the curbside pickup at the end of the month. They service 60,000 customers, and the special district is funded by county millage and our taxes. That's where the funding comes from for the special district. This unilateral decision has upset many residents. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, especially when it originated back in January, and they expressed even just paying extra for recycling. They were just very upset that they weren't heard and that this decision was just made without any kind of input. Currently, there are only 2, maybe 3 unstaffed recycling collection locations to capture that waste within the area of Greater Greenville Sanitation's district. Not only will this increase cross-contamination of recyclables, but will also cause an exponential increase in traffic at these locations, as well as potential increased safety issues and vehicular accidents. If one resident of each home or location were to drop off their recycling twice a month, burning just 1 gallon of gas each trip, that equates to about 1,066 metric tons of carbon dioxide being put into the atmosphere. To put that in perspective, that's about 230 cars driving for a whole year worth of emissions just for people to go drop off their recyclables twice a month. According to Greater Greenville Sanitation Services, as of November 2022, the yearly cost for recycling was only about $64,588. This is 0.08% of their yearly budget, so less than 1% of the yearly budget was used for recycling. If residents were to pay just $10 a month, that would be about $600,000 a month in revenue, which equates to about $7.2 million over the course of a year in revenue for recycling. And as development continues to grow, this revenue will continue to grow, as well as our waste and recyclables, which is why it's so important that we continue this curbside pickup to continue this accessibility to people in the area and across the county. So there are solutions that allow sanitation services to continue curbside recycling pickup, and they can also make a substantial amount in revenue to help fund that and beyond. So I know that I'm just one person bringing my concerns directly to you guys, and we've gone to the board itself first to bring it to them, and it fell on deaf ears. They didn't really care or want to hear from us. So I'm asking that there's a temporary suspension on this stopping of curbside pickup so that, and we can revisit this issue constructively.
Thank you very much. Next we have Virginia McClure, topic Planning Commission and Growth.
Hi, Virginia McClure. I live in Landrum, South Carolina, in Gownsville. And my words today will be pertaining to the unwanted development in my district, District 17. When I was formulating what I wanted to say to this panel, it was full of comments on policy, ordinances, procedural ideas, facts, and data. Intellectually, I know these are the nuts and bolts that will ultimately get us to a place of change. But then I heard an interview with psychologist Dr. Keltner describing the mental and physical effects on us when we realize the awe around us in nature, art, or what he calls the moral beauty of those we come in contact with. I realized I had to speak from my heart concerning the state of my beautiful district. Once the land is gone, it's gone. Once an animal's habitat and food source is gone, it's gone. Once a plant or creek has been eradicated, the whole world suffers. And what's the point of taking and taking and taking from this earth? For another useless RV park, or an unwelcome Dollar General, another cheap subdivision that rapes the land and gives nothing back to the earth, except an acre of so-called green space. In order for us as a species and a community to value this incredible land and feel connected to it and each other, we have to be long-range thinkers and put sweeping checks in place to lessen the disastrous effects on the land and focus on saving it for the good of all, not focus on how we can obliterate every square inch for our own gain. There has to be a place in this world for forests and rivers and open spaces, so we can't forget what's really important in life. We have to make saving the land the priority rather than an afterthought, and that's what I and my neighbors in District 17 want you to do. We want laws, ordinances, provisions, whatever you want to call them, that will lessen the possibility of large-scale development and put more land-saving rules on the development that does come. We are doomed if we have nowhere to escape the heat, the pollution, the overcrowding, the traffic. Too many developers salivate over how much money they can make off the land, how many old-timers they can hoodoo into selling them their family farms. The words responsible or environmental growth have never passed their lips. As of today, I and my neighbors can still find some awe in the sound of an owl, or the bark of a fox, or the groan of a 100-year-old beech tree in my backyard in the wind. But the hyenas of development are coming, and they're coming fast. I want you to remember there is room in politics for your heart, for doing the right thing, and for moral beauty. Thank you.
Next we have Stephen Scilato. His topic is Greenville Library.
Hi, my name is Stephen Scilato. I live in District 19. Thank you for making some really practical and smart changes to the way these comment sessions work. I love civics. I am a nerd for democracy. Anybody here will tell you that. I've loved hearing about the historic trusts. I'm going to come every month, even when I don't have something to complain about. Having said that, yesterday I watched that the library board put a sudden halt to that good civic energy, especially this line from the proposed policy. Materials that contain explicit sexuality or gender transition ideology that are intended for a target audience of 13 to 17 will be included in the adult collection. Let's look at it closer. The phrase gender transition ideology. However you feel about the gender stuff going on, you should Google that phrase. You'll quickly find that it is not a real term. No one knows what it means. It's a phrase from the darkest, sweatiest armpit of the internet. And for the first time ever, it's about to be a public policy. What about this phrase, explicit sexuality? Half of the books I read in high school had explicit sexuality. You have tragedy and you have comedy. And in tragedy, people die. And in comedy, they have sex. Instead of this unenforceable language, here's what good governance would look like. When a patron makes a complaint about a book, it gets sent to a committee of qualified librarians, like we've always done. That group of experts reviews it and sends a quick decision directly to the patron that issued the complaint. Instead, the board has chosen the most expensive solution. If the director makes $160,000 a year, and her top managers also make pretty decent wages, and they all spent, let's face it, the vast majority of the past 9 months forcing through these policies, what has the county spent on this project? Is it $250,000? Is it more? How much will the inevitable lawsuits cost? This won't be one staff member winning lost wages from the library like happened in 2019. This is taking a hard turn towards a class action suit. The language I just read is amateurish. It is definitely not going to hold up in court. There's an easy fix. Appoint someone to the library board who acts in good faith. Send a peacemaker, or at the very least, someone with real leadership experience. There are 12 of you. There are 12 branch libraries. I call on you to go to your branch library. Reassure staff that there are mature adults in the chain of command. Bring a care package, a muffin, a letter of support, something human, because librarians are being treated like they're not.
Up next, we have Jules Ray, and our topic is libraries.
Yes, I am Jules Ray, 30 Addis Drive, in Mr. Blunt's district. I work for the Greenville Library System, speaking of that. I come to work every day because I care about the community that I serve and the work that I do. I'm also a queer staff member. Every day, while I'm trying to provide an important service to the community, I have to reckon with the fact that the members of the library board that county council appoints and the executive director of the library that county council oversees would rather I not exist. Not because I've been admittedly a bit of a thorn in their sides, but because I'm queer. So it all started in June when the library director, Beth James, and Chairman Alan Hill directed all Pride Month book displays be removed. I do the displays at my branch, so I had to see my work get torn down on the grounds of bigotry. I started the first LGBT program that the library has ever had, a queer book club, and I called it the Rainbow Book Club. In October, Sid Cates, who once openly made bark jokes about a gay man at a county council meeting, demanded that all advertising for the book club be removed. Alan Hill said he didn't want it to look like the library was promoting LGBT things, and then compared my book club to a Nazi gathering. And then after that decided to change the Rainbow Book Club's title to just Book Club. So yesterday, the library's material review committee voted to move LGBT materials to sections of the library where they will be inaccessible to the people who need them the most. During that meeting, which was filled with hateful, homophobic, and transphobic comments from board members who, again, county council appoints, I was working at the library as queer as ever. I have been screaming into the void for the better part of a year. I've sent many emails to the library board, county council, and library administration saying that I am experiencing discrimination in my job, and it has never been investigated. An institution that the county oversees is openly ignoring claims of discrimination from an employee who belongs to a class protected under Title VII. I'm not alone in that either. Lots of staff members have complained over the last year, and some have even resigned with no changes made at the library. I know that county council doesn't want to get too involved in the library, and I understand that. I actually agree with it. The library should ideally be able to self-manage, but it's being run by a group of people, again, appointed by county council, who are actively working against the ethics and duties of librarianship. I'm not asking you to get involved in micromanaging the library. I'm just asking that someone on county council care enough to make sure their appointees aren't actively harming the library. Personally, I would love to see the immediate removal of Marsha Moston, Alan Hill, and James Ford after the comments they've made relating to the LGBT community. Thank you for listening.
Up next, we have Miles Dane, and topic is library.
Hello, my name is Miles Dane. I'm a graduate of North Greenville University, I'm a library professional, and I live in District 19. I also would like to thank you for the new online sign-up that has made life amazing in terms of coming to these meetings. I didn't have to come and hang out here for hours beforehand. Last June, the library removed Pride Month displays 3 days before the end of June. Then Jeff Davis and Joe Dill started making false claims about the content of books in the library's children's section. Throughout the fall, he and others would continually claim that they didn't want to ban books. They just wanted to remove explicit content from the children's section, even though there never was any. Many of you here saw through that charade and voted not to censor books. Fast forward, and Joe Dill and Sid Cates and their crony allies on the library board are moving forward with banning books. Laura Baker resigned from her seat on the board to make space for this council to appoint an LGBTQ person. I'm here to tell you that yesterday, the Library Board Materials Committee voted to remove all LGBTQ books from the children's and teen collection. Books like Heather Has Two Mamas. During that discussion, Marsha Monston, the woman who this council, or your predecessors, chose to replace Laura Baker, went on several unhinged, hateful, and discriminatory rants about transgender people. It is well documented that board member James Ford has shared hateful posts on social media, including one calling for the execution of LGBTQ people. Alan Hill has repeatedly compared LGBTQ people with Nazis, and has verbally harassed library staff over LGBTQ materials without remorse. The library policy they intend to amend to censor these books states as follows. Any restriction desired by parents and/or legal guardians on their own children's use of material is the parents and/or legal guardian's responsibility. That seems good enough to me. These board members are stripping parents of their parental rights. This is what Rush Limbaugh would have called the nanny state. It is time for Alan Hill, James Hord, and Marsha Boston to be removed from the board. They are not qualified librarians. They are not concerned with serving all people in the county, and they are solely focused on censoring people they do not like. If you continue to let their reckless behavior go unchecked, this library and county will find itself the focus of lawsuits related to censorship and workplace harassment. Thank you.
Right next we have Jan Willis. The topic is SAC and Planning Commission process.
Good evening, I'm Jan Willis. I live at 106 Lakeside Drive in Taylors. On October 31st, the Planning and Development Committee heard information from staff regarding their investigation as to a possible change in the SAC and the PC process. The final conclusion was that while community meetings would be helpful in the high-stakes situations, it was not feasible for all subdivision applications. To my knowledge, this process has not changed. I am requesting that this committee encourage the PD committee to revisit the October 31st discussion and with resident input, consider revising the SAC and PC current procedures. Sadly, my district, my Pebble Creek community, lost the fight, and soon 70 acres of green space will not be there. Instead, it will be filled with homes that do not meet neighboring CCRs, and it will be built by a developer who lives 3 time zones away. Mr. Biddle told me in a conversation that this process has been in place for decades. Well, that may have worked well in the past, but it does not work well now. There is a disconnect between the staff, the developers, and the residents, and everyone is frustrated. Speaking from personal experience, my group organized and followed the county procedures. We formed an LLC and we investigated the LDRs. We organized a community meeting with our councilmen to discuss our concerns. We wrote a moratorium and gave it to the county administrator, asking for a pause in subdivision approvals until the county could investigate the infrastructure challenges of traffic, water, schools, and sewer. We wrote thousands of emails. We presented each planning commissioner with a portfolio of our concerns and our LDR violation questions. We contacted our state senators and the SCDOT, and we pleaded for a traffic impact study. And then we respectfully voiced our opposition in our allotted 10 minutes with the PC. What happened? Well, the PC and the staff dismissed our LDR violation questions without any explanation as to why. And they ignored our request for a new TIS.
10 seconds, we can wrap it up.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So the current process is not effective use of staff time and resources, and it certainly discourages residents, and it likely annoys the developers. So in closing, I'm requesting that the council consider a revision of the SAC and PC process that includes community meetings when requested by the residents and provides for an appeal process before you go to litigation with circuit court.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next we have Brenda Buchik. I'm sorry.
Thank
understand everything, but I do expect board members to respect others' rights to have different values, and expect parents to make appropriate choices for their children without the help, oversight, or overreach of the library board or other parents within the county. Lastly, I'm concerned about Alan Hill's house behavior. I've heard about things where he's frightened and intimidated staff here and there. I've heard of certain things that James Ford has done. The board's mission says to champion literacy, inspire learning, and foster community connection, which that does not seem to match up with Alan Hill, James Ford, or Marcia's conduct. I would like to have someone on the board who has experience in being in a library setting, and making materials available for everyone of different values, and not limiting those materials just because someone is afraid to watch their child's library. Thank you.
Next is Susan Ward. Topic, library board.
Hi, I'm Susan Ward. I'm a constituent of Dan Tripp. I'm the president of PFLAG Greenville, a chapter of the nation's first and largest organization supporting, educating, and advocating for LGBTQ people and their families. But I'm here today, first and foremost, as a parent. Many of you have heard me tell my story more than once before County Council. A mother of two, I lost one child to suicide. And more often than I like to admit, I fear for the life of the other, because he's a member of the LGBTQ+ community. My surviving son is transgender. In addition to speaking before council, I have made it a priority to attend library board meetings and share comments when permitted. I attended yesterday's meeting. As you've already heard from others here today, the discussion from some members of the Materials Committee was appalling. Since I have limited time, I will focus on board member Marcia Mostyn. Her monologue in yesterday's meeting can only be described as a shockingly transphobic rant. Much of what she stated as fact about transgender people and families was blatantly untrue. She doesn't know the first thing about so-called gender transition ideology, because she has refused to humble herself to speak with members of our own Greenville community who have lived experience raising transgender young people, including myself. I have volunteered by email and in person to serve as a resource to any interested member of the library board, and specifically reached out to Mrs. Mostyn in December. After answering one email of mine, my invitation to get together was met with silence. Instead, she gathers facts from God knows where to bolster her personal distaste for the idea that transgender people, even transgender children, exist. The ignorance she displayed in the meeting was stunning. Reading about a transgender, non-binary, or gender-expansive person in a book does not turn a child trans. There is no tremendous move to take the decision out of the hands of parents. No schools in California are secretly providing hormones and mastectomies to 12-year-old children. What makes me fear for the life of my transgender son? Incendiary diatribes like the one I witnessed yesterday being put forth by public officials. That kind of speech puts my son at risk, along with every member of the LGBTQ+ community. That community includes folks who work at Greenville County Libraries. This kind of dangerous rhetoric has no place among those you have appointed to guide our libraries. Marcia Mostyn has proven she does not deserve a place on that board. Thank you.
Topic, traffic impacts.
I'm Taylors. I own a business in Greenville. My children attend school in the Greenville County school system. I taught for 4 years in Greenville County schools. I'm an active community member, and I'm asking you to appoint ethical and responsible library board members. The current Greenville County Library Board is seeking to restrict access to books containing info related to sex and gender. As a community member, I am appalled by this plan for censorship. 75% of Americans oppose book bans. Why is the Greenville County Library Board made mostly out of people who support library freedom less than most Americans? The materials the Library Board wants to restrict are those that give children age-appropriate information about gender identity, sexuality, sexual abuse, and sexual intercourse. Having this age-appropriate information is proven to reduce suicide, sexual abuse, sexual encounters at young ages, and teen pregnancy. I want my children protected by the power of information. Why doesn't the Library Board want to protect my children? The American Library Association states that librarians and governing bodies should maintain that parents and only parents have the right and responsibility to restrict the access of their children and only their children to library resources. The Library Board is violating citizens of Greenville County's First Amendment rights by attempting to further restrict age-appropriate library materials. Taking books made for children that contain basic information about sex and gender or portray the diverse experiences of families and individuals in our world violates the rights of kids and parents. It is also an attempt to alienate and discriminate against members of our community. If Greenville County Council doesn't appoint ethical library board members, books that give kids vital information for their safety will be restricted and more kids will be in danger. Please make choices that give the public the resources we need using the tax dollars that we pay.
Catherine Steenerson, topic library book bans. Catherine? All right, one more. We're going to move on. Next is Troy Stiles. Troy? Going once? Troy? All right. Up next is Mr. Ed Paxton. Topic priorities.
I'm Ed Paxton. I'm mailing addresses. 1 York Circle, Greenville 29605. And I gotta get my reading glasses on because it's getting to be that age. I offer the Greenville County Council has its priorities upside down, or has had them upside down for several years. I offer to you that we don't need development destroying this area, like it has in Atlanta and Orlando and Dallas and Los Angeles. And if you people on council continue to cater to development, we'll be well served to hold a referendum and opt for a different form of local government. That's what our county council has melted into. I say development is okay if it's for the benefit of the people who have lived here for years and years, or who were born here. But a Philo, a Volvo, or a Volkswagen is totally out of order. We don't need to be dependent on the auto industry like counties have been in their catering to the Home Builders Association wants. See what a mess this home builder creative thing has become with our unified sewer system. Folks, can you not see what the auto industry did to Detroit? I urge you to start serving the people like ex-county manager Gerald Seals did some years ago when he came here advocating a service by the administration for the people of the county. He and his few months of employment here did more for the people than some of our councils have done in the last 10 years of hustling and chasing development.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Up next is Julia Sellers. Julia? All right. Next is Amanda Barbarito. Topic books.
Hello. I live over in Pebble Creek too. Thanks for working on that traffic. So I'm Amanda Barbarito, and I'm just here. I didn't see the library action yesterday, but I heard about it. So being different is hard, especially for children and teens. Children in the LGBTQ world are keenly aware of this. These kids do not go this route to get attention. They don't go this way for fun or any other ridiculous reasons that are made up. They don't get up in the morning and say, I'm going to make my life really hard today. Maybe I can get the bullies to come pick on me if I act like this. Maybe I can get made fun of. These kids also didn't decide on this path because of something they read or saw on TV. They were created this way. In August 2019, a genome-wide association study of 493,001 individuals concluded hundreds or thousands of genetic variants underlie homosexual behavior in both sexes, with 5 variants in particular being significantly associated. This is how they are born. This is how they are created. So they did not choose this path, and it is a scary path. These youth are at least 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their heterosexual counterparts. Being different is hard. There is little comfort for the struggles in their day-to-day, but one comforting thing could be finding a book that makes you feel less alone. A book that will reassure you that life can get better and become easier. What is not helping them are bullies. The bullies that want to take away their rights, the freedoms, and absurdly enough, take away access to a small escape in the pages of a book. I understand their fears, but I don't understand the people that are trying to restrict their access. I read Harry Potter, and I did not turn into a witch. I read the Witcher series, and I am not good with a sword. I read the Hunger Games, and I have yet to overthrow the government. I read everything that comes from David Sedaris while remaining straight, although I did laugh a lot. My husband has also taken up with David Sedaris and is also still heterosexual. The content that is received does not change who the person is in that biological way. It can maybe accidentally make somebody think or open their mind or not be determined. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next is EJ Scherer. EJ. Topic libraries.
Hi, my name is EJ Scherer. I live in District 23. Nearly half of LGBTQ youth have considered or attempted suicide, other people have mentioned. 1.8 million children every year. That's about 1 every 45 seconds. A huge contributor to these statistics is lack of social support and affirming spaces. The goal of certain library board members to censor even age-appropriate queer materials is just part of the push that's ongoing right now to deny people their right to exist and take up space in our society. And children, even some of your children, most likely, are watching this happen, and they're watching how you in particular react to it. They're watching how their parents react to it, the adults around them, and they're deciding whether or not they're safe to tell you who they are. safe spaces, and free access to age-appropriate materials, such as those they can access from the public library, or could until yesterday, are vital to healing these devastating suicide rates and making sure our children are alive to grow up into the best people they can be. At a certain point, you have to ask yourself if you'd rather your children are queer and alive or queer and dead, because it's not going to change whether they're alive or they committed suicide because of lack of access to safe spaces and safe materials. Thank you.
Corey Sherrill. Topic, public library.
My name is Tori Sherrill. I live in Taylor's. I'm also an employee of the library, although after the presentation earlier, I feel like I want to become a car. I am here to express my extreme concern with the discussion that happened at the Material Review Committee meeting on March 13th. What I heard was homophobic, transphobic, and goes against all library ethics. According to Articles 2 and 3 of the Library Bill of Rights, libraries should, 1, provide materials and information presenting all points of view on current and historical issues, and materials should not be prescribed or removed because of partisan or doctrinal disapproval. And 2, libraries should challenge censorship in the fulfillment of their responsibility to provide information and enlightenment. These are the professional standards that should guide libraries when making decisions about policies. Instead, members of the board are bringing their own set of conspiratorial beliefs and homophobic ideas into the decision-making process. Mrs. Mostyn's comments were particularly heinous. As a library employee who works with many trans and non-binary people, I was horrified at the language she used to describe the trans community. Trans people are not dangerous, but the Fox News adjacent rhetoric that she used is. Members of the library board have proven over and over again that they are homophobic and bigoted, and they should have no place on the governing board of an institution that stands for diversity and inclusion. In addition to the gross displays of bigotry I witnessed, I am concerned about why the board is making this change to the collection development policy at all. The policy, as is very strong and compares well to other similar policies at libraries around the state. And it works. I'll give an example. A few years ago, the book A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas was in the young adult section. There was a complaint, and using our policies as they are now, the book was reevaluated and moved to the adult section. So if our system and policies work as they are, what could be the motivation to change them? Based on the board members' own words, I believe it is because of their own personal homophobic beliefs and hatred of the LGBTQIA+ community. They believe themselves to be fighting a culture war, and they are bringing that energy to their roles as library board members. They have no idea what being a librarian actually is or what our professional standards and ethics are. Mrs. Collins said that the board doesn't want to be reactionary or start a witch hunt. But I would argue that all of the actions that the board has taken over the past 6 months have been entirely reactionary and specifically targeting the LGBTQIA+ community. Instead of supporting and trusting the work of the professional librarians, they have decided to overstep their role and impose their bigoted beliefs on a public institution. That is not what library boards are supposed to do. At one point during the discussion, Mrs. Collins asked Mr. Ford, "So you don't think we should restrict access to anything in the library?" Allow me to provide the correct answer to her question. Let the professional librarians decide. Thank you.
Billy Taylor. Topic is freedom.
Well, it's not exactly free. My name's Billy. I live in the historic section of downtown Greenville. I'm here to talk about banning some books. I said we banned some books. I got so excited about banning some books, I did some research. I looked in what harms children more than anything in the state of South Carolina. Obviously, it's books. Obviously, kids get hurt when they read a book. But for the life of me, I could not find one instance. I did find what does hurt children. Anybody want to guess? Anybody want to guess? Don't worry about it. That's what I found. And I kind of went down a rabbit hole. I was like, gosh, South Carolina, surely you got something we can stand on. But there's not. As I looked into it, we have a pretty bad track record. I actually found out that for my entire life, the vast majority of leadership in the state of South Carolina has been Republican. What has that gotten us? Well, for health care, for our citizens, we're 41st. For wealth for our citizens, we're 42nd. And coming in at a strong 48th in education. 48th. But I digress. I was still trying to find something to help me have some legs to stand on my book banning. And I looked and I looked and I found a group. I found a group that was really big on book banning. Anybody want to guess? Anybody? They're in Europe. Funny little guy, weird little mustache. Anybody? Now ask yourself what they did after they banned books. What happened next? It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. If you do know the answer to any of those questions, be glad that book wasn't banned, because it could have been. Now, what I've noticed, and gosh, it's just so apparent, all over South Carolina, really our country, certain parent groups and politicians, they want to distract us, right? They want to do the switch of hands and everything. They want to focus on fear-mongering. They want to divide us by challenging books that actually represent marginalized and oppressed people. So my question is this, and it's real simple. If you allow this to happen, how are you going to pick up the slack? And take my remaining minute to answer that. What are you going to do if you allow it to happen? Because the slack will be there. Do we just not represent them? Do we not care? Is some kind of personal agenda more important to you? I mean, fine. You don't want your kids reading something? Super. Parent your kids. But don't parent mine. It's not your place. Good day.
Next is Jim O'Connor, topic rezoning.